There's a window in this room. Small one. Faces the parking lot, which isn't much to look at, but I look at it anyway. A car pulls in, someone gets out. They walk through those sliding doors down the hall, and sometimes I wonder who they're coming to see. It's not always me. It's almost never me. That used to bother me more than it does now. I'm going to try to say something today. I'm not sure I can say it right. I've been turning it over for a few years now, maybe longer, and I still don't have the exact words for it. But I'm 88 years old, and I figure if I can't say it now, I'm not gonna get another chance to. So, let me try. I was useful for a long time, from the time I was about 14 years old and started working summers at my uncle's hardware store, all the way up until, 73, 74, somewhere in there. At 60 years of being useful to other people, 60 years of being the one who showed up, who fixed things, who paid for things, who knew what to do when something went wrong. I was good at it. I want to say that clearly, because this isn't a story about a man who resented his responsibilities. I didn't resent them. I was proud of them. When my kids needed something, I was there. When the furnace quit in January, I was the one on the phone at 6 in the morning. When my daughter needed money for her second semester, I had it. Not easily, but I had it. When the car broke down on the highway and nobody knew what to do, I knew what to do. That felt good. I want to be honest about that. It felt good to be the one who knew. I've been sitting with something for the last few years, something I don't quite know how to name. It's not bitterness. I don't think it's bitterness. Bitterness has a heat to it, and this thing is colder than that. It's more like looking at an old photograph and noticing something in the background you never noticed before. Something that was always there, you just weren't looking at it. What I've been noticing is this. When I was working, my phone rang. When I retired, it rang less. When I sold the house and moved into the apartment, it rang less again. And now I'm here, in this room, with this window, and some weeks it doesn't ring at all. And I keep asking myself, is that because I got old, or is it because I stopped being useful? I think it's the second one. I think it's mostly the second one. Let me tell you about my wife, Eleanor. We were married 51 years. She died in 2014. And I'm not going to sit here, and say anything against her, because I loved her, and I believe she loved me. And whatever I'm about to say, I want you to hold that alongside it. Both things can be true. But in the early years, when the kids were small and money was tight, I worked a lot. I worked too much, probably. I'd come home late, eat whatever was left on the stove, fall asleep in the chair. Eleanor managed everything. The kids, the house, the appointments, the social calendar, all of it. I provided the money, she provided the life. That was the arrangement, and I was fine with that. I was grateful for that. But looking back, and this is the part that's hard to say, I wonder sometimes if Eleanor loved me or if she loved that I made the arrangement possible. And I wonder the same thing about myself. Did I love her, or did I love what she built with what I gave her? Maybe that's too clean a question. Maybe love is never one thing. But there were moments, small ones, Times when I'd be laid up sick, really sick, and the house felt like it went on without me. Times when I'd have a bad quarter and I could feel something shift in the air. Nothing said, just a tension, a worry. And I could never tell if she was worried about me or worried about what my bad quarter meant for us, for the life we'd built. I don't know the answer to that. I genuinely don't. And then in her last years, when she was the one who needed taking care of, I did it. I did all of it. I learned things I never thought I'd learn. How to manage medications, how to talk to doctors, how to change a hospital bed. I was useful in a different way by then, and she was grateful. She held my hand and she said thank you, and she meant it. But I wonder sometimes whether the gratitude was for me, for being her husband, her companion of 50 years, or whether it was for the function I was performing. I wonder if she'd have been grateful to anyone who did those things. Maybe she would have, and I don't know what to do with that. My son's name is David. My daughter is Karen. They were good kids. They really were. I don't want to make them into villains because they're not villains. They're just people. People who grew up watching me be a certain kind of man and learned, I think, a certain way of relating to me because of it. David always called when something needed fixing. Car trouble, tax questions, problems at work that required someone with experience to weigh in. I was good at those calls. I liked those calls. I'd listen, ask a few questions, work through it with him. He'd say, "Thanks, Dad," and mean it, and I'd hang up feeling useful, feeling like a father. But when nothing was broken, he didn't call much, and I never questioned that, because I didn't call much either. That was how men in our family communicated, through problems, through tasks. If there was no task, there wasn't much reason to call. So maybe I built that. Maybe I'm the one who taught him that's what I was for. That's the part I keep coming back to. Karen was warmer, more phone calls, more visits. She'd bring the grandchildren over when they were young, and those were good years. I'd fix their bikes, help with homework, babysit when she and her husband needed a night out. She'd say I was wonderful with the kids. She'd say she didn't know what she'd do without me. The grandchildren are in their 20s now. They have their own lives. Karen and her husband moved to Phoenix 5 years ago for his job. She calls on birthdays. She called when I moved in here. She was upset about that, actually, about me being here, but upset in a way that was more about the idea of it than about me, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't what she'd imagined, like the picture had changed. She hasn't visited since September. That's not a complaint. That's just a fact. I've been trying to figure out when it started. Not the moving away, not the fewer phone calls, but when the thing underneath all of it started. This arrangement, if that's the right word. I think it started before I did anything wrong or right. I think it started with my father. My father was the same kind of man I became. Working man, quiet man. You knew he loved you because he showed up, because he fixed things, because the lights stayed on and there was food on the table. He didn't say it much. He didn't have to, in his mind. In his mind, the lights being on said it. I watched that and I thought that's what a man is. A man provides. A man solves. A man is useful. And I became that. I really became that. I was so good at it. But I never learned, and this is the thing, this is the part that sits with me. I never learned how to just be a person to the people I loved, how to sit with them without fixing anything, how to be in a room without being needed. I was uncomfortable with that, with just being. So when people were around me, I'd find a thing to do. I'd repair something. I'd organize something. I'd offer advice nobody asked for, because it made me feel like I had a reason to be in the room. Because if I wasn't useful,
I didn't quite know what I was. And I think people learned to come to me for that, for the use of me, because that's what I offered. That's what I put on the table. I trained them. I think I trained them. When I retired, I was 68. I thought it would be a relief. I'd worked since I was 14. I said that already. 60 years. I thought I'd earned the quiet. I thought I'd enjoy it. But the quiet was different than I expected. The first year wasn't bad. Eleanor was still healthy. We traveled a little. I had projects around the house. I built a workbench in the garage. I refinished the floors in 2 rooms. I still had things to fix. But after a couple of years, the projects ran out. The house was in good order. Eleanor was managing her own days, her own routines. She'd been running the house without me for decades. She didn't suddenly need my help now that I was home more. If anything, I think my being home more was an adjustment for her. And I'd go to work for 40 years. I'd had colleagues, not close friends, but people who called, people who wanted my opinion on things, who'd consult me on problems in my area. When I retired, they threw me a party. Nice party. I shook a lot of hands, somebody made a speech, and then nothing. Nobody called. Why would they? What would they call me about? I didn't work there anymore. I realized that most of what I'd called friendship was really collaboration. We were useful to each other, and when the usefulness ended, the relationship ended. Just like that. Not viciously, it just evaporated. I played golf for a while, joined a group of men at the course, all retired, all in roughly the same situation. We'd play on Wednesday mornings, and I'd think, these are my friends now. But it was thin.
We talked about golf, and we talked about what we used to do for work, and that was mostly it. Nobody talked about feeling useless. Nobody talked about watching their phone not ring. We were all doing the same performance of fine. One by one, health got in the way. One man moved to be near his kids. 2 have died since. The group just sort of fell apart. I'm not sure I ever really knew any of them. There was a day, and I keep coming back to this day, I don't know why, about 4 years ago, just after I sold the house. I'd lived in that house for 43 years, raised both kids there, buried Eleanor from there, in the sense that we came back there after. Everything that mattered to me had happened inside those walls or in that backyard. David flew in to help with the move. Karen called several times. The grandchildren sent a group text saying they were thinking of me. And then, the last morning, before the new owners came, I'd been sleeping on an air mattress. The rooms were empty, the echo was strange. I made coffee in the one pot I'd kept out, and I sat on the floor in the living room, and I looked at the room. And nobody called that morning. Which made sense. Why would they? They'd all been in touch during the move. David had helped. It was done. There was nothing more that required them to be in touch. But I sat there on the floor of that empty room, and something became very clear to me. Something I'd been half knowing for years. I don't know how to say it, except plainly. I was not the kind of man people thought about when nothing was required of them. That's not, I want to be careful how I say this. That's not the same as saying nobody loved me. I think people loved me. I think Eleanor loved me. I think my kids love me. But it's a specific kind of thing I'm describing. I was not the person any of them would call to say, I was just thinking about you. I'm not sure any of them did think about me when there was nothing to think about me about. I was like, I'm trying to find the right comparison. I was like a tool that's kept in the drawer, thought about when needed, not otherwise. And I had been that tool willingly, happily even, for most of my life. But sitting on that floor, I felt the shape of it for the first time. I've tried to figure out how much of it is my fault. I think a fair amount of it, I really do. I didn't teach my children to know me as a person. I didn't give them much of a person to know. I gave them a father who showed up, who provided, who fixed the bike and paid the tuition and drove them to practice and never missed a game. But I didn't sit with them and talk about things that weren't tasks or problems or plans. I didn't tell them when I was afraid of something. I didn't tell them much of anything about what happened inside me, because I wasn't sure much of anything happened inside me. I thought that was strength. I thought being opaque was the same as being steady. So they knew what I could do for them. They didn't know me. And if you don't know someone, if you've never been given the chance to know them, you can't miss them when they're just sitting in a room. You can only miss what you knew. And what they knew was the version of me who could be of use. Eleanor knew more of me than the kids did, I think. We had our private moments, our shorthand, the way she'd look at me sometimes across a room, just a look that said something between us that had no words. I hold on to those. But even there, even with her, we did not talk about the deep things much, about fear, about mortality, about whether we'd made the life we wanted or just the life that was in front of us. We talked around it. We made jokes. We were good to each other. I don't know if that was enough. I thought it was. I thought that's what a long marriage was. Learning each other's rhythms, accepting each other's silences, enduring together. And there's something to that. There's real something to that. But I wonder if Eleanor ever felt fully known by me. I wonder if she died wondering that. I didn't ask. I wish I had asked. Some people say, I've heard people say, that this is a man thing, a generation thing, that men like me were made a certain way by a certain time, and you can't ask the fish to notice the water. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's too simple to blame myself. But I find I can't entirely let myself off with that either, because I had choices, small ones, but I had them. I could have called my son when nothing was broken. I could have told my daughter something real about myself, once, just once, instead of asking how the grandkids were doing and offering to fix whatever needed fixing. I could have let Eleanor see me scared sometimes. I chose the other thing every time, not out of cruelty, out of habit, out of the story I was living, which was, I am the one who holds things together. That story served me for a long time, and then it ran out. I'm not angry. I want to be clear about that, because I think when a man my age starts talking this way, people assume he's angry, that he's getting things off his chest before he goes, that this is a reckoning. It's not a reckoning. It's more like an inventory. I'm just looking at what's actually there. What's there is this. I lived a long life. I loved people, and I think I was loved. I worked hard, and I provided well, and I was, for a long time, a man that people could count on. Those things are true. Also true, most of the love I received was contingent on my functioning, and most of that was something I had built carefully over many decades, without knowing I was building it. When you build your identity around being needed, you make yourself into something that exists in relation to others' needs. And when the needs stop, when you get old, when your hands shake, when you can't drive anymore, when the grandkids don't need homework help, what's left? I'm still trying to answer that. I've been here 19 months,
and I'm still trying to answer that.
There are people here, at this place, other people in these rooms. Some of them have family in every week, every other day. Flowers, grandchildren, noise in the hallway. And some of them, more than you'd think, some of them are like me, waiting for the phone, watching the parking lot. I talked to a woman down the hall a few months ago, 83 years old, was a teacher for 30 years. She said, "The ones who've come to see me the most since I got here were the ones I didn't do the most for." Her youngest daughter, the one who was always in trouble, who she worried about most, that one comes every week. Her two oldest, who she'd always called the successful ones, the ones she was proudest of, she's seen them twice. She said she didn't understand it. I think I understood it, a little. I think she was just more real to the youngest one. The youngest one had seen her struggle, had seen her tired, had seen her without the performance. The others had known the teacher, the competent one, the one who had things handled. And the teacher is less interesting to visit than the mother. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting. I think about what I would do differently, and I get tired because it all required becoming a different kind of person, and I'm not sure I could have been a different kind of person. The seed that produces a particular tree can't decide partway through to become a different tree. I was what I was. I am what I was. But I'll say this much. If I'd been able to say to my son, "David, I'm not calling about anything. I'm just calling." If I'd been able to do that once in a while, if he'd heard that enough times to know that I thought about him when I didn't need anything from him and he didn't need anything from me, maybe he'd call more often now. Maybe he'd think of me between the times when something needs to be thought about. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe this is just the nature of how it goes. You raise children and they become people, and those people have lives that move forward, and you are a chapter in those lives, and the chapter gets further and further back in the book. I don't know. I don't know which explanation is true. Both, probably. My father died alone in a hospital room. He was 81. My mother had gone first. I was there. I got there in time, or close enough, but he'd been alone for some hours before I arrived. And when I came in and took his hand, I didn't know what to say, and he wasn't really there to say anything anymore. I remember thinking, this is how it ends. Not with judgment, just this is how it ends. A man lives, he works, he provides, he ages, and then he's in a room. And now I'm in a room. I didn't do everything my father did. I was more present than he was, I think. I went to more games. I helped more with the kids when they were small. I'm not the same man he was, but I'm in the same room. And I wonder if my son will think someday, when he's old and wherever he ends up, I wonder if he'll think, I was more present than my father was. I did more. I called more. I was warmer. And then wonder why he's alone too. I don't have a way to finish this. I started talking because the room was quiet and there was something I wanted to try to say, and I've said most of it, I think, though saying it hasn't changed it. I don't feel better. I don't feel worse. I feel the same as I do most mornings, which is just aware, just awake, just here. There's a man my age,
I read about him somewhere, I don't remember where, who said that old age is a foreign country. You show up there and you don't speak the language and everything's unfamiliar and you're not sure what the customs are. I thought that was good when I read it. That's not quite what I feel, but it's close. What I feel is more like I'm in a room with a window, and I'm looking at something I couldn't quite see when I was in the middle of it. You can't see the shape of a room when you're inside it. You have to get to the edge before you can look back and see what the shape was. The shape was this. I was a useful man. People are glad of useful men while the use is there. After the use is gone, there's something left, the man, I suppose, and it turns out that something is not very interesting to most of the people who were interested in the use. Maybe that's not their failure. Maybe that's just the bargain I entered into and kept and was proud of. I was proud of it for so long. I don't know what I would have been otherwise. I'm not sure there was an otherwise. I'm not sure I could have been the kind of man who just sat with his son without fixing anything. I don't know if I was capable of it. But I sit with that now, not bitterly, just I sit with it. There's a car pulling into the parking lot. A woman, middle-aged. She's moving quick. That purposeful walk you have when you're going somewhere you've been going regularly, when you know the route. She'll come through those doors and turn down one of these hallways. I don't think she's coming this way, but I watch anyway, out of the habit of waiting, or maybe just out of something that isn't quite hope anymore, but used to be. I'm not sure what it is. I'm still working that out.